Hello, colleagues and friends. Now it's working. Thank you very much for joining us in this event. The mission of Costa Rica is very honored to co-host this event with the Office of the SRSG and to welcome you. The fast developments in information and communication technologies and the important changes that these developments generate in our lives and in the ways in which we relate to each other represents both risk and opportunities. I'm very honored to welcome you to the side event to present the report of the SRSG on violence against children regarding the information and communication technologies and violence against children, minimizing risk and releasing children's potential. This report is in part a result of the expert meeting that the Office of the SRSG organized in Costa Rica. And we believe it's a very important and timely report. In Costa Rica, we have been working on the issue of technologies, adolescent, young people, and children. Some months ago, we organized a conference with ITU on that issue, and also we support a meeting of the Office of the SRSG. The National Institution of Children in Costa Rica has a center of information and orientation that is working in using new technologies, phone, internet, and also social media in order to promote and protect the rights of children, receiving information, complaints, but also giving orientation to children. And we believe it has been a good experience because it has allowed us to communicate with young people in the language they use. And this is a very new issue, and we have more questions sometimes than answers. How can we guarantee the freedom of expression online and at the same time protect the rights of the children? How can we democratize the use of the internet and close the digital gap that we have within countries and on countries also? How can we use technologies to promote and protect the rights of children? And how can we use technologies for human rights education and training? And these are some of the questions that I have. And I think this event can help us to answer some of them. I thank again to Marta for all her efforts and for having us here together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. The mission of Costa Rica, the government of Costa Rica, and our very good friend, Adriana, for being here. Thank you so much for being here today. I see many friends around the table and many of the experts that have joined us in the promotion of this important new study, which is capitalizing on the experience and very good work of many organizations, many of which are also represented here. So it's a great pleasure for me to be with all of you. As you have seen from the program, we have a great group of panelists with wonderful work done in the area, but also with a fantastic opportunity to make a difference, be it as researchers, as United Nations child rights experts, as United Nations agencies, or as representation of the many important young people around the world who are really becoming unique experts in the use of new technologies. I will come to each one of the speakers who are going to intervene, but before I wanted to share with you the key highlights of this study, and you of course can take a copy at the entrance of the room in case you have not received it. As you have seen, the title is Releasing Children's Potential and Minimizing Risks, ICTs, internet and violence against children, we wanted very much to put an emphasis on the resourcefulness of young people, their leadership, their expertise, and the opportunity for them to be empowered to make use of the new technologies in the most empowering and positive manner, including to gain skills to overcome the many risks that they face very often online, and to know how to cope with these risks, to be resilient and supported in this effort. As you know, there has been a huge revolution in this area. We say it very often, but it is very important to recall it, that when the Convention on the Rights of the Child was being adopted, the internet was really starting. It had been mentioned and appearing only a few years earlier. And the same year the adoption of the convention was the year during which the World Wide Web was launched. So 25 years on, of course, a lot has changed. I think looking around the room, we see so many people with iPhones and smartphones and iPads and computers. And that's what you feel when you go into the bus or the train or the plane. And that's part of everybody's lives. But it is also very much part of children's lives. The smartphone, the access to the computer, the use of the internet is as common to my very young grandchildren as I try to be equally common to me, but certainly I'm a bit behind when I compare to them. So we believe that really these tools have been very important to give children the opportunity to online get access to important information for their lives. Certainly also information to protect the rights of the child. We are very encouraged by the fact that when we ask children, if you have a problem, whom do you call, they access the website of the ombuds in their countries. They access the child helpline that exists in the country to seek advice and to seek assistance. Or they report incidents of violence through these technological means, also because very often it makes a big difference for them to keep the anonymity and to be able to seek advice without really exposing themselves and exposing to any risk of reprisal or harassment. So that is certainly very important. But at the same time, of course, we cannot ignore there are many, many risks that are associated with this important trend. I'm sure that Kirsten Sandberg will be telling us a lot about how the rights of the child play a decisive role in this context, especially now that the Committee on the Rights of the Child has just held a wonderful thematic debate on the topic, and will be many good news to, of course, to share with all of us. But we want, as you may guess, we want very much to build to inform the study and to continue to work in this area, informed by the way young people see this process, the potential and the challenges. And for this reason, we are delighted really to have with us Gal Rosig, who is a key person, as you will see in a moment, but who was one of the many hundreds of young people who contributed to a survey done in Latin America that has been very important for the development of our study. As Adriana has mentioned a moment ago, there is a huge digital divide when we think about the fact that around the world, close to 4 billion people do not have the use of these common tools, and 90% of these live in the developing world. So the concentration of these tools, of the access, is of course in a little part of our universe, which makes it very difficult for children to feel with the same opportunities and ambition. So there is a huge geographical and digital divide. But at the same time, the developments have been so rapid that, of course, for parents and for caregivers and teachers to keep up with these same developments, it has been very difficult. And very often, the young people are the experts in the home, and they are the only ones who have access to a computer or to the internet or to a smartphone, which creates also a generational divide that sometimes is bridged in the best way, but sometimes this is not the reality. So our study has tried to address 3 fundamental questions. The first is, who are the children online? What is their age and the context within which they have access to new technologies? How can we capitalize on the important international human rights standards and other standards that can help reduce risks and empower young people and explore to the maximum the potential of new technologies? And thirdly, is there an agenda that we can recommend that everybody can follow so that we will be closer to narrowing the gap between what we think we know and the things we really don't know yet, so that we will not keep trying to get hold of the next development and being each day perhaps more distant from it. So very, very quickly, I know that Veronica Donoso from European Union Kids Online will be addressing this in greater detail, but more and more children are, in fact, using these technologies. They start at an increasingly younger age, and they spend more and more hours using the new technologies, with all the good and less good implications. The fact that very often children may use a smartphone or may access the internet through a cyber cafe or in their bedrooms makes it, of course, very challenging for parents or caregivers to keep providing guidance and surface this new universe together with their children. And in the developing world, of course, the challenges are even greater. This, of course, creates many challenges. And to give just one example that is addressed in the study, between 1997 and 2006, there has been an increase of 1,500% in the number of child sexual abuse images on the internet. This is absolutely daunting, as we know. And it depicted children are younger and younger. In fact, available data considered as more than 80% of child victims are 10 or younger, and amongst them, many are babies and toddlers. I have no doubt that Maud de Boer-Boukikio will be addressing this topic, since it is such an important area falling under her important mandate as Special Rapporteur on sale of children, child prostitution, child pornography. But of course, we also want in this study to say that this is not inevitable. We know enough to prevent, to reduce risks, and to give children the confidence and the resilience that they need to make a difference. I want in this regard just to quote one of the things we have learned from our Latin American friends when they were telling us in a very pragmatic manner, as usual, technology is not bad. What is bad is the not so good use you may make of it, and that is obviously true. And they were saying that accessing and empowering children and using new technologies for the good is just a click away, as it is doing harm to oneself or to others. And they are very committed to being very responsible citizens and, in fact, using it in the best way. And, of course, Gal will tell us a lot. And Andrea Urbas, who is a very leading advocate in this process in Latin America, will also share a few thoughts with us. Now, of course, we have the Convention on the Rights of the Child to help us in all this. I'm not going to address it now, since we will hear further. But what are we recommending? In a way, we are recommending 6 fundamental steps, a multifaceted, inclusive, and empowering agenda for children to use the online world. And the first thing, of course, that this implies is that we don't want solutions to be driven by fear or censorship. We want solutions to be driven by knowledge and by investment in children. And the first recommendation we do in our study is that solutions need to be guided by the best interest of the child, by views and experiences of children, and we need to ensure that children are part of the process of our reflections when we develop legislation or policies or information awareness campaigns using the online world or any other material. And guided by ethical standards, children should be part of any research initiative that we may wish to continue to promote, and no doubt we will hear more about that. The second recommendation is, of course, that we need to have a very comprehensive agenda, well-resourced, and at the same time integrated in all policies that help to prevent and address violence against children, but which gives a distinct attention to the online world. And this agenda needs to invest heavily in policies to support the families so that they have the skills and the knowledge to do the best thing in the best way and to join hands with children I remember that Veronica was telling us that learning how to use a bicycle, we never try to tell the child to do it on his or her own, but when we give a smartphone or we allow the child to use a computer, we seem to forget that the bicycle requires, that technological bicycle requires a similar tool. So a lot for families, of course, to support. Schools have a unique potential, and they bridge so many differences, including in the community and with families, in addition to children and teachers. Partnerships with civil society and the corporate sector, of course, will be fundamental. And this agenda needs to have an evaluation and monitoring system so that we keep assessing how well we are doing. The third thing we recognize, and it's the third step in our recommendations, is governments have a leading responsibility. Of course, we know that the corporate sector plays an important role. These technological advances seem to go on their own in parallel to everything else, but the responsibility of governments for the protection of the rights of the child remains as necessary and relevant as for any other area. And one part of this accountability is clear legislation to prohibit all forms of violence against children, including in the online world. And we recognize in our study that the legislation should be technologically neutral, because there are so many developments that we cannot have the legislation crystallizing the moment we live today, because there will be so many developments happening in the near future. And of course, the law will not be useful if no one knows what it says and doesn't know how to use it. So of course, we need to invest. Fourth point, professionals working with and for children need to have sound knowledge and skills to support and advise children, to address the risks that they may encounter, and to identify early signals of victimization of children, supporting responses that may be required. With this in mind, we recognize the importance for professionals working with children to have a mandatory reporting requirement, so that if there is anything wrong, that the relevant institutions be made aware. But of course, we need to counsel and give children the means to report and complain. And this is important. And in this regard, telecommunication companies can help in providing, for instance, free of cost access to child helplines that exist in the countries. And this is just one example. And finally, of course, those children who are victims need access to remedies, to recovery, to reintegration. They need to make what goes wrong part of a past, and not necessarily a trauma that gets reproduced every day because of the risks of the cyberspace. I know that Clara Somarin from UNICEF will be talking about some of these important contributions of the private sector, the industries, and with ITU, they have not only issued a very important set of guidelines, but have new things to announce. So we are very eager to listen to you. So this is a daunting challenge, but it is really, really, it is a feasible challenge. And I think we want to influence and anticipate the future, and we want to do it with you and certainly with young people that who GAL is representing here. So this is what the study highlights, but now we would like to give the floor to the friends who are going to go deeper in these different areas. And Veronica Donoso, as I mentioned a moment ago, has been working as a researcher, as an educator, as a mother in so many of these areas, and she is going to start. Veronica, please.
No problem. Shall I start? Yeah. So can you hear me well? Yeah? Okay, hi. So, good afternoon, and thank you everybody for being here and
for being willing to listen to some research we have been doing in Europe. Today I'm representing two research projects and a big research network from Europe. I represent today the EU Kids Online, which is a network of 25 different countries in Europe, plus Turkey, doing research on ICT and issues related to ICT and children. And I'm also representing a smaller project, which is the Net Children Go Mobile, where we actually do research on issues related to mobile technologies and how they affect children, both in positive and sometimes, unfortunately, less positive ways. As you can see, you've already referred to this in the introduction, and online technologies offer a myriad of opportunities for children. They are mainly used for communication, for information purposes, but also for learning and for fun. So children of all ages, and when I say children of all ages, I really mean like from babies to adolescents, they seem to be using the technology in very similar ways, although they do possess different skills. Now, the interesting thing is that even though technologies, and we want to emphasize, there is a great positive aspect of technologies, that they can be used for empowerment, they can be used for learning, for lots of positive activities and content, there are still a number of issues that could also pose some risks. In terms of risk, and we've done quite some research on that, what we see in our research, and the table I'm showing right there, it's basically a classification that we did after our first research. We started this research in 2006. In 2010, we carried out an interview in 25 different countries all over Europe. And the main results that we observed, we tried to summarize them into this table. What we saw in terms of online risks is that they mainly relate to three main aspects, what we call them the 3 Cs. So basically the risks that children are confronted with online can be summarized as risks relating to content, so basically things that they find online, that they find on the internet, risks related to contact, that has to do with the child being in touch with other people, and risks related to conduct, so the things that the child does. When we talk about risks, I think this is an important and an interesting distinction. We don't see children only as victims. In a few cases, children are also perpetrators of some behaviors. Like you see the case of cyberbullying, or you can see in sexting, or other kinds of activities where the children engage might also have a negative impact on other children. So it's important that we observe that we have different roles of children in terms of the kinds of risks they are exposed to, but also in the types of risks that they face. For instance, we see lots of risks related to aggression, violence, but also we see risks of a sexual nature, as well as risks related to values or commercial issues. The research I mentioned, the second research I mentioned, the Net Children Go Mobile, they carried out research on a subset of European countries, so first in 5 countries, but now it's extending, and the network now it's extending to 9 European countries already. But we do see some trends in terms of online risks. If we compare the data from the first research we carried out in 2010, and we compare it to what happened in 2013, we do see that online risks are on the rise, unfortunately. Now, my next slide shows, for example, that there's a very short summary of what has changed, but we do see a rise in cyberbullying. Although it's important to notice that bullying and cyberbullying is part of a much bigger program, which is just bullying in general. So cyberbullying is on the rise, but still offline bullying, I would call it, but although I don't really like to make the distinction between online, offline, bullying is bullying, and bullying hurts. But cyberbullying is a bit on the rise. We also see a rise in meeting strangers. So children who have met people online, they do meet sometimes people offline. Now, it's important also to take into consideration that when we say strangers, we don't necessarily mean adult strangers. It can also be other peers. So it can be that they meet friends of friends, and then, well, they meet this person offline. So meeting strangers, and that's why we call it risks and not necessarily harm, but I will come back to that point later. There's also a rising negative user-generated content. And by user-generated content, we mean all the kinds of things that adolescents and children themselves post online, but other people post online. So people on the internet are creators of content. They share the things they do. They share pictures. They share the things they write. They post things on each other. So all that can be considered as user-generated content. We also see a slight rise in terms of pornographic material and also sexting. We define sexting as the exchange of sexual images or messages among peers. But also there is a rise in the percentage of children who report self-report harmful experiences, especially among girls and especially among teenage girls. Next one, please. Thank you. Also interesting to observe, in 2010, we didn't pay too much attention to mobile technologies because they were, and it's just 4 years ago, but they were not that popular, and certainly not as popular as they are right now. So it's very interesting to notice that children who are using tablets and children who are using mobile phones are being exposed to more risks than children who are only using desktop technologies. What is also interesting to observe, and it's that younger and younger children are actually using these technologies. And probably if you know little children, if you have children yourselves, or little brothers, sisters, or relatives who have little children, you would notice that they are able to do already some things with technology. And even if they don't do it themselves, they might use it as proxy users. They might ask you to show them something on the telephone, on the tablet. So it is important to also pay attention to this fact. When we talk to children, because our research, and I didn't mention that at the beginning, what we did was a survey, but we also did interviews with children, and we have carried out also focus groups with children. So we have been listening to children. For us, it's very important as researchers to give children a voice. It's not just about numbers, it's not just about percentages, but we also want to know from the children themselves what are their concerns. And these are some summaries of answers that we got for children when we asked them, okay, what bothers children your age? And many of these concerns relate to violence, relate to violent content, to violent things they've seen online, to videos, but to also information that might be used to hurt themselves, like suicide sites, anorexia sites, or things like that. In terms of risks, when we talk about sexual risks, they can be interpreted in a number of ways. But it's important also that to show that our research hasn't has shown actually that they are commonly encountered. So children tend to also look for this type of content, especially older boys. But they are not necessarily experienced as harmful by many children, if not by most of them. We also think this has to do with the fact of children exploring their sexuality, looking for content. So not all the time that a child is confronted with sexual content means a child is hurt. Now, what we do see, like for younger children, for younger girls, this content is harmful. So it's also very important to look at the bigger context, to also consider that sexual content is a very broad concept. It can be anything. So it's different to look for sexual content that involves nudity or to something that involves like really hardcore pornography or something even worse than that. So it's important to take into consideration what we mean by risks is not necessarily harm. Violent material, that's also a big concern. Children are concerned about that, but we do notice that there is little media attention given to this. There's a lot of concern about violent content, aggressive, gory online material. Children are very aware of that, and many children are confronted with that. We are currently doing a pilot study with very young children, children younger than 8. We're interviewing their parents and little children, 6, 4 years old even. And they are not very much aware of risks, but a few of them are already mentioning that they don't like it when they see like violent content or violent video games. So we think it's important, and it's a trend that affects also very young children. In terms of user-generated content, as I mentioned before, this is also a risk that it's on the rise, but I'm not going to spend that much time on that because I know I don't have much time left. We see a new type of risk emerging. It's probably not new, but the picture on the right, and that's interesting, it comes from an interview with a 6-year-old girl. And she was showing us how she was able to download video games on the tablet. At the same time, I mean, this is the latest research we are doing right now in 7 European countries. I was interviewing the little girl. A colleague of mine was at the same time interviewing her parents. The parents were assuring us that she was not able to download anything. At the same time, she was telling me, well, this is how I downloaded this game, and she was showing me how she did. So it's very important, it's extremely important, that, and I wanted to emphasize that, that even though parents think they're doing the best, even parents think that most risks will come in the future. I mean, that's the message we get when we interview parents of 4 or 6 years old. I'm checking out with my child. I don't let them do anything online. I'm controlling. I'm providing everything. I'm worried about what will happen when they become teenagers, when they use the internet in their bedroom, because so far I'm supervising, I'm monitoring that, and I think I'm quite successful. But I know something can happen in the future. But what we are seeing is that actually what they think they're doing it very well, and we not all of them are successful. And what we find most worrying is the fact that this comes from a family, from a mother who has a university degree. They have a very good socioeconomic situation at home. They are parents who talk to their children. But we are also interviewing parents whose mothers or parents cannot write, children of immigrants, people in more difficult situations, parents who cannot write. So their access to technology is extremely limited. I mean, the internet is a medium where you have to write to find information, to access it. If you are not literate, if you cannot even read or write, how can you assess the risks that your child is encountering? And this is research we're doing in Europe. So I don't even want to think about what is happening with younger and younger children in Africa, in Latin America, in Asia, where they have less access. And probably they are starting to get access to technologies in some parts of Africa, like Google, Facebook. They are offering people free access to some technologies, but giving access and without improving the literacy level of parents, of young children, of teachers, it's not necessary. It's not, it's not enough. So what do we see? And I post that as a question mark. The older, the safer. So does it mean children in general have a higher, or they seem to be safer, or they assume they have higher e-safety skills as they get older? But also we observe that they are confronted with more risks as they get older. So it remains a question mark. I mean, what kinds of risks can a young child be faced with, and are they prepared to face these risks? Some are, some might not. Boys in general claim to have more skills than girls, but we haven't done real tests with children. It's basically what they think they are. So we don't know if they're more confident or they are really more able with technologies, but probably you will tell us more later about that, I hope. And well, and I said before, tablet users seem to be having, are being confronted with more risks, but on the other hand, they also display more skills. And well, this is just some of the, coming from our recent research with 6-year-old and younger children. we do see some awareness of risks, not much, but some children are saying, some big people want to sell things to you, or I don't like it when boys play a game when they shoot people dead. I mean, these are comments we are getting. I think it's interesting to see how, or like, I can't click there because something bad can happen to the tablet. So they seem to be a little bit aware of mainly viruses or technical risk, a bit about commercial risks and violence, but in our research so far, none of the youngest children seem to be aware of other types of risks. Still, we think that it's important to emphasize not all risks result in harm. As I said, our research also shows that in order to build resilience, children need to have some experience of risks. The important thing is that they need to learn to cope with risks in the most positive possible way. Protecting children and trying to limit all types of risks is probably impossible. So what we need to do is to certainly work from a very, very, very young age and try to guide children into a responsible use of the internet. So the main conclusions and the main words are there highlighted. I put them in a different color because I think they are important. Media literacy and education is essential. We need to start from a very early age because we now see 4-year-old children already using quite a lot of technology. So the possibility of risks is also there. But we need to pay attention to vulnerable groups, especially to the children who might not have a strong network, who might not have a family who can really take care of them. They can have loving parents, but it's not enough to have loving parents in this online world. You need parents who are also able to assess risk and to guide children in how to cope with risks. You also need teachers and the extended society to take part in here. We also see that for younger children, there's not such things as online, offline. I come from a generation where, for me, the computer, I wasn't born with a computer, and the internet came even after the computer. So for me, there is a difference in the online, offline world. Young children don't see that difference. They are born with it. They use it all the time. So, and what happens online affects offline and the other way around. So we do observe that children who are most at risk online are usually children who also have psychological problems, less strong networks. So it's children who are vulnerable everywhere, both online and offline. My main recommendations there, it's like to work and it's probably just a repetition of what Marta said, so I'm not going to repeat it. I totally agree with what she mentioned at the beginning. We need to work on raising awareness. But raising awareness is not enough. I mean, campaigns are not enough. We need to do something more substantial. We need strategies, I think, rather than just one-shot campaigns. You can have a safer internet day like every year, but that's not going to change the minds of people. That's not going to be enough to educate. So raising awareness is important. It's one thing, but we need to go much deeper than that. We also need an approach that takes into consideration legislation, and legislation that goes hand in hand with what we need, which is provide protection, but also empowerment. And I think two things that are very, very important: evidence-based research. We cannot recommend people to do the right thing if we don't know what works and what doesn't work. We need to be able to say, okay, this is the way parents should behave, this is what children should do, but we need to build that upon research. And also incentivize the private sector. Because basically, when I say children are confronted with online risks, but also with opportunities, what they are doing is using technologies, using what technology allows. If you think 10 years ago, younger children weren't using technologies, or not that much. Why not? Because they had a mouse. They needed to be able to control a mouse. A 2-year-old child cannot do that. He cannot understand. I mean, there was a difference. You can understand how to move a mouse, and that what happens on a mouse would have an impact on the screen. But nowadays, they can just touch, do things, move it. So the technology is improving, the technology, but it's also facilitating. And that is also creating some risks. So just to finish, maybe the last picture. what I always come back to the metaphor of the bicycle. So yeah, probably the child on the left is going to be exposed to less risks, but I'm not so sure if she's going to learn to ride the bike. So I guess we want to move towards the right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Veronica. I think we would love to continue to listen to you. It's always so exciting, and you are behind such a fabulous research initiative that we will continue to learn from. So congratulations, and thank you so much. I'm sorry that we are pressed by time, but there are great speakers that will follow, so we need to capture on all of them. And I'm really, really, really happy and honored to have Gal with us. And she will be exciting you as much as Veronica, for sure, and the ones that will follow. But she brings this vision from within, which I think is so needed, as you just stressed. We keep assuming that we understand and we know when we guess, but they tell us better. And therefore, Gal, the floor is yours. Oh, first, Andrea Urbas from thematic is going to introduce, and then Gal will follow. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks you, Marta, for this important invitation. I speak on behalf of Chicos.net, an NGO from Argentina working for the promotion of a good quality of life for children. Our approach aims at ensuring the inclusion of ICTs as a strong component in all our projects. Chicos.net is currently coordinating the Latin American Network of Children on ICTs, named thematic, a network of 11 NGOs from 8 Latin American countries, like Costa Rica, Uruguay, Colombia, Chile, Paraguay, Peru, Mexico, and Argentina, with the support from Save the Children. The mission of thematic is to promote adequate socio-political and cultural conditions to safeguard the right of children to a safe and responsible use of ICTs at local, national, regional, and global levels. In 2013, thematic conducted a regional consultation with more than 1,000 teenagers between 12 and 18 years old from 9 Latin American countries. And the findings of this survey encourage us to develop a comprehensive follow-up, including campaigns and other participatory initiatives to develop appropriate tools and strategies for the empowerment of children. In doing so, we wish to support children in the use of ICTs for education, capacity building, and socialization, and to minimize the risk associated with lack of awareness and education and the absence of adult guidance and support. Well, now I'm delighted to give the floor to Gal, a young representative of Latin American teenagers. Gal is from Argentina, and she has participated in the development of the program Todo un Clic, in the creation of a video clip that maybe we could see, and in the process that led to the regional manifest of children that she will present to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be here. I represent Latin American children and teenagers who raised voices. Listening to us is the best way of getting to know what the real situation is. I believe we must not be underestimated, and on the contrary, by taking into account our opinions and requests, we can all get to a more profound understanding of the situation we're living and make the necessary changes to improve the quality of our development as citizens we are now in our present, and not the citizens we will be in the future. This way, I'd like to share with you some of the results of this survey. The outcome of this survey was quite alarming. Numbers show that children in Latin America know very little about their rights and responsibilities in the internet use, and the fact that we're constantly exposed to risks. For example, there is very little knowledge about the protective tools existing on social networks, how our privacy may or may not be invaded, and how citizenship codes we have in real life must be included in our virtual world. 84% expressed that it's necessary to take some risks in order to make a productive use of the ICT. 52% believe that when someone hurts or speaks ill about another person, the situation should be ignored and one shouldn't take part in it. 52% of the teens admitted to feel discriminated at some level through the social networks. In the next video, we can see some examples of Latin American consulted children who answered to this survey.
Los sábados cuando yo voy a cómputo, personas mayores me mandan solicitudes que aún no conozco. Son personas mayores de edad y que yo borro, pero siempre me siguen molestando, que cómo está mi amor, y me mandan a decir cosas así, pero yo solo lo que hago es contarle a mi mamá o contarle a alguno de mis profesores lo que me mandan a decir, entonces ellos me dicen que borre el internet o que no me siga metiendo ahí o que lo elimine o que no le responda a esa persona.
A mí nunca me pasó algo de ese sentido, pero sí muchas veces que yo entraba en Facebook o en una red social y encontraba como grupos que se hacían entre amigos para molestar a otros, de una forma, a un compañero, qué sé yo, para sentirme en una onda. O sea, eso que me llamó bullying en la vida real, o sea, eso mismo que a través de internet.
Siento que gran cantidad de la sociedad actual ha visto cosas así. Por ejemplo, porno, morbo. Han visto muchas cosas así y siento que eso se está descontrolando.
So, considering the ICT as a means for fulfillment of children's rights, such the access to information and quality content, social inclusion, freedom of expression and participation, among others, this survey works as a baseline to find solutions for a problematic situation. And this is how program Todo a un Clic, which means one click away, was created by Rednatic. Along the program, 1,050 teenagers between 13 and 18 years old from 7 Latin American countries worked together in order to accomplish these objectives: raise awareness on children's rights, educate towards a digital citizenship, and always include us in this process of raising awareness and consciousness on these issues. During the program, these objectives were achieved by different means. First, the campaign's clip, we will be able to see when the presentation is over, which tried to create awareness. The creation of this clip also involved teens' participation. Myself, for example, had the privilege to give my opinion on what images, phrases, and examples of problematic situations we were the most connected to related with ICT. Also, I participated in the voting of characters and different rhythms we wanted to use for the campaign clip. Therefore, one of the main reasons that explain the campaign's success is that it was made taking into account our own opinion. Also, the website, todoaunclic.com, shows a lot of teenager participation. Videos, postcards, and more were uploaded telling different stories and a variety of experiences each of them had with the ICT. And last but not least, the process of creation and debate, which had as a final result our inter-regional manifest, which we will gladly share a printed version with you. This process was divided in 3 stages. First, each country carried out forums in which teenagers were able to debate, ponder, and create different strategies in order to raise awareness on the subject. One of the activities during the forums was to start thinking about what recommendations and requests the Latin American teenager community wanted to express to adults. They are considered to be able to act to favor the significant use of technologies and protect us while we have access to them. After this first stage, each country had a second workshop in which all these recommendations and commitments were debated once again, achieving a list of most important ones in each country. Towards the third and last stage, a regional video conference was made with youth representatives from each country in order to consolidate the inter-regional manifesto. In this way, Latin American children and teenagers elaborated this consolidated manifesto, which includes the commitments we take regarding the use of the ICT and the most relevant recommendations to the different social actors, such as the state, the school, the private sector, and the family, who can all act to favor the good use of technologies. These, for example, were the recommendations to states, in which we can read that states should ensure a universal and free access to the internet. States should promote the participation of children. States should support young leaders. This way, the campaigns that the states carry out will be transmitted to children through their peers. They should take into account their opinions and experiences and share it with other youths in the country or the region, granting the message was successfully spread. And also, as a result of the consolidated manifest, we have the commitments we make as digital citizens, which include that technologies should be used for productive purposes. It's necessary to be willing to learn and not to produce or share materials that encourage hate and violence, to create channels of dialogue with parents on the risks we might be facing so that they teach us, not to judge or criticize between our peers, and the responsible use of the internet should become a trend. The transmission between peers definitely helped to spread the message among other teens. We already have examples of teenagers that took action beyond the program itself, as we can see in this video.
Si en la escuela navegas con la compu de alguien más, atención si te vas, no te olvides de cerrar, divertirse y tomar fotos con el celular. Antes de publicar, piensa en quiénes las verán. Todo a un clic. Deberás empezar a cuidarte un poco más, si no muchos problemas esta red te traerá. Si quieres no podés proteger tu identidad, seguridad debes tener sobre tu privacidad. Todo a un clic.
I would like to briefly explain that these are examples of children and teenagers that changed the lyrics of the original song of the video clip that now we will see. And those changes were made according to their own experiences with the ICT. It's in Spanish, but that's the changes they made. So in conclusion, we children and teenagers want to know more about our rights, considering the ICT as a tool for information and education. The access with no discrimination should be equal for everyone. And when it comes to the use of the ICT, we are not only using a tool, but we're living in that digital world, where we see ourselves involved in an environment that presents a lot of opportunities and benefits, as well as risks. And with the necessary information, resources, and attention from the states and the other social actors to this subject, those risks will probably be minimized, and in this way we will be able to get even closer to the ideal of all our rights being respected, our duties being enforced, and we will be able to make a significant and productive use of the ICT. Thank you very much for your attention.
Excelente. Excellent. Excellent. Really, it's so good to listen to you, Gar. And we feel so. I think we could all sing now. I mean, with our own.
We can see it.
Let me just say one thing. I think it's so beautiful that more than 80% of the children and adolescents surveyed in Latin America, not only there was this fantastic contribution, but recognize that access to new technologies is a fundamental human right. It's so powerful, so powerful. And that, I think, is a great bridge to then ask Kirsten Sandberg, the chairperson of the Committee on the Rights of the Child, to share with us some of the reflections from the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and also thank you to the presenters that have gone before me. You really had some wonderful presentations. I'll try to be brief. We had a day of general discussion in the Committee on the Rights of the Child on the 12th of September. It's strange or interesting to see how all of these projects and discussions seem to sort of come together during the same year. Actually, we were supposed to have this day last year, but we have a great backlog on our reports, so that's why we had it this year. But anyway, we had an extremely interesting day of discussion, and we had so many good presentations. I can't possibly do justice to everything that was said during that day. I will just try to refer briefly to the conclusions, the recommendations that were made. Some key issues were that empowerment of all children in digital media is crucially important in order both to maximize beneficial effects and to minimize the harm. Empowerment of all children is only possible through a sustained multi-stakeholder approach and cooperation. And empowerment of all children should be founded on a balanced approach between protection and participation, where children are the drivers of a safe and participatory digital world. I'll go a bit more into some of the issues that were discussed. And in one of the working groups, what I just mentioned was mainly from working group 2, I think. In working group 1, we discussed safety and accessibility. And again, it was underlined that access to ICT is considered as a fundamental right for children, as has been underlined here before. And also that there is no divide between ensuring access and safety. Then first to accessibility. Some barriers for access to ICT were identified. They could be geographic or infrastructural. They could be economic, or they could be social and cultural. That would be for girls, children with disabilities, children living in situations of poverty, children in institutional care, and other children in disadvantaged and marginalized situations. And then the recommendations with regard to accessibility. This, of course, has to do with Article 2, the non-discrimination principle in the Convention. Would be to ensure equal access to digital media and ICTs through providing technology or the right infrastructure, ensuring, and this is not least important, free or low-cost accessibility, and consider alternatives which would make it more economic for children to use these ICTs. Also, targeted efforts would be necessary for different groups of children, in particular girls, children with disabilities, and other vulnerable groups. Then to another key issue, which was digital literacy, which has both to do with empowerment and with protection. Because there was identified a lack of knowledge and awareness, which we've heard about before, among children, parents, teachers, law enforcement officials, and others that are working with and for children, professionals and others. And the recommendations for digital literacy, which would actually both have to do with freedom of expression and also the right to access to information by children. On the other hand, also with the right to protection from violence in all its forms, and also protection from exploitation of any kind. It would be to provide digital education for all children, parents, teachers, and all those working with and for children, and ensure that this education is of good quality. Secondly, include online education methods in school programs, including children with disabilities, and that also includes, of course, the right to education, which is central in this regard. So that we should use these methods also in school programs. And then to do with protection maybe more, and also the right to privacy, that social behavior, there should be training ensured in children's social behavior online. Social literacy, not only the digital. Then to the third key issue, which was safety. I've already touched upon protection, but still It was identified in more detail, but we've already mentioned it here. New risks and harms, which would be inappropriate content, violent images, cyberbullying, sexual exploitation, advertisement targeted at children, and then protection of privacy was also mentioned. I think this is a slightly different challenge, which I think we should think more about. This is more what children do to themselves, what parents do to children, and when they don't know about the risks of posting things that might be sort of innocent, but it's still, they reveal their whole private life. And of course, in this regard, also the lack of awareness of risks and harms. And the recommendations for, with regard to safety would be to ensure awareness raising for children and adults, provide training for law enforcement and also other professionals, ensure legal and self-regulating mechanisms that guarantee safety in the net, develop technological solutions for prevention and protection, ensure availability of assistance and support, including child-friendly complaints mechanisms, helplines, and compensation for victims. The fourth issue was data and evaluation. There is a lack of data and research on this. We know that it's coming up, but still. And the quickly developing technology changes fast. And so I agree with Marta that it's necessary to find solutions that are not related to specific technologies, but can go across those. So research and data collection should be promoted. We should create a platform for sharing and exchanging good practices. Ensure that laws and policies are evidence-based, and ensure periodic review and evaluation of laws and policies. So this is more to the general measures about data and legislation. The final issue was collaboration and joint responsibility in this respect, because one does see that there is insufficient collaboration between different actors, including states, private sector, and civil society, etc., and not least that children are not included sufficiently, and that, of course, has to do with Article 12, the right to state their views and to be heard in all aspects that affect children's lives. So all of this should be ensured. That would be the final recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kirsten. A very comprehensive overview of such important topics, and no doubt we will be working more together on all of this. And now I'm very happy to ask Maud Bukikyu to follow, because she has been a key contributor to the study that we are launching today, but also her mandate is central to what we will be doing next. So it's a great honor to count on your presence. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Marta, and thank you for having taken the initiative to gather us here today, but above all for having started this consultation process, which led to your to the release of your beautiful study. I want to congratulate you with that. And I'm sure it's just the beginning of a consultation process. We will have to continue and listen to all relevant stakeholders, but of course, in particular to the children. I'm very happy that at least one of us is below the age of 18 here. So many of the speakers today have already made it clear in different wordings that children and digital media are inseparable in today's digital world. Be it a teenager browsing the net for academic research, or a child exploring chat sessions for social contacts or entertainment, for fun, as Veronica said. Our challenge is to make it safe for children and to maximize its benefits, rather than to allow them to fall into its many traps. But when it comes to cybercrime, because a lot of these issues touch upon the issue of cybercrime, we have this tendency to focus on sanctions and repressive measures. At the same time, it is my view that the crucial issue here is to put in place the necessary measures or means to assist children in protecting themselves, rather than trying to cure them and to heal them after the often irreparable damage we need to provide them with a mechanism of self-immunization. In this digital era, we must empower children to use digital services safely by supporting them and equipping them with safety nets and resources, rather than depriving them of its potential benefits. By empowering children, we will also strengthen efforts to combat cybercrime, as I just said, such as, just to give a short list of them, the possession, production, and distribution of online child abuse material, grooming, live streaming of sex abuse, and other forms of sexual exploitation of children facilitated through ICT, and the potentially dramatic consequences of self-generated sexual explicit material, including the privacy issues, which Kirsten has just mentioned. So empowerment of children is about a shift from our traditional approaches of focusing only on law enforcement agencies or non-governmental agencies specializing in this area to a citizen-led awakening and collaborative information gathering to combat online sexual exploitation of children. There's an old saying which says, "A thorn should be taken out using another thorn." And what that means for us here is that while cyberspace has a huge potential to breed cybercrimes, it also has the opportunity to address these crimes. And we need to explore new avenues and further develop the active involvement and participation of children as agents and advocates of child protection online. Children can act as great watchdog of abuses against their own peer group. And for this purpose, the promotion and implementation of basic digital literacy tools for children is a must. But we should use the language of children to make them understand the opportunities and threats involved in digital media by using digital media itself to do the talking. We should reach out to children using popular digital services by using child-friendly graphics, graphic feed videos and text through popular internet services. And I think the Toda in a Click is just a good example. But there are many other ways, I'm sure. At the same time, yes, we need also to empower adults. It's equally crucial. Many families and communities discourage children from making use of internet for fear of abuse. Parents, school authorities, policymakers, and other local community resources close to children should be given basic digital literacy and should benefit from awareness programs to support children to use digital media safely by equipping them with the resources that they could reach out for protection. So while empowerment of children constitutes a new paradigm in the fight against their sexual abuse and exploitation online, we need to continue strengthening effective law enforcement. In this respect, a transnational cooperation for effective detection and reporting systems, information sharing, like through the Interpol database, and other security systems continue to be crucial. And the daunting figures which were mentioned by Marta at the opening of our meeting today, and also in her report, they call obviously for robust law enforcement. Strong partnership with major technology service providers of popular digital media services is also important to enhance prevention and create awareness. The message to make digital media a positive experience for all would be in the strategic interest of the service providers as well, rather than being projected as the evil stepsister by many parents and community groups. An important means of empowering children in stopping their sexual exploitation online is crowdsourcing. The potential for children to contribute to crowdsourcing is huge and underexploited. Using crowdsourcing, children can be empowered to act as online activists. Crowdsourcing platforms allow children to use different media like mobile texting, emails, web forms, etc., to share information anonymously or otherwise to seek help and support. Crowdsourcing has no geographical boundaries and can act as a transnational information network. The anonymity that crowdsourcing platforms give to the informer and less intimidating method to inform is a less intimidating method to inform than approaching a law enforcement system, and that should be utilized for its benefits. Collaborative mapping and mobile texting constitute additional means offered by ICT which allow children to report or share their local information to a common platform using modern technologies. A friend of a young victim, parent of a young child, silent witnesses in the child pornography production groups or pornography communities are all our allies and activists to bring out cybercrimes that go undetected. The challenge in our digital era is to put in place the necessary means to assist children in protecting themselves and to give them an agency role in stopping and combating sexual violence online. ICTs offer us an array of tools to do so. So let us use them to allow children to protect themselves and assist us in the global fight to stop child sexual exploitation online. Thank you.
Many thanks, Maud, and you always bring very inspiring words, and I think we will keep the self-immunization for sure, just to mention one. Thank you. I think it couldn't be a better moment now to turn to Clara Somarin, who is going to tell us what can the industries do and how can we interact with them, because as we heard, there is a lot on which to capitalize. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you, Marta. And first of all, I want to thank you and the Permanent Mission of Costa Rica for inviting us here today at this panel and to present these guidelines for industry on child online protection, which were recently released by ITU and UNICEF in September at the Internet Governance Forum in Istanbul. And as already noted by the distinguished panelists today, we need a multi-stakeholder approach to address violence, exploitation, and abuse in relation to ICTs. And of course, the corporate sector and the ICT industry can play a critical role in this. And the development of the guidelines for industry and child online protection has been a collaborative effort between ITU, UNICEF, and partners of the Child Online Protection Initiative, including the ICT industry itself. The guidelines are aligned with the UN guiding principles on business and human rights, and they're based on the guidelines that ITU developed in 2009. And they're really a result of a broad consultative process involving the ICT industry and other partners that we undertook last year. So the aim of the guidelines is to outline actions that companies can take to protect and respect children's safety online and enable positive use of ICTs. And they recommend that industry act in 5 key areas. And I know that the time is pretty short right now, so I will try to go through these 5 areas very, very quickly. First, the industry should integrate child rights considerations into all appropriate corporate policies and management processes. And for example, this could include developing a child protection safeguarding policy or integrating online risks and opportunities into other relevant policies of the companies. Companies should also integrate due diligence on child online protection issues into assessment processes and identify impacts on different age groups. Companies can also establish grievance, remedy, and reporting mechanisms within the companies itself. Second, companies should develop processes for handling of child sexual abuse content, as the special rapporteur also spoke to. For example, they should put in place procedures to ensure compliance under local international law, develop notice and takedown processes for reporting on child sexual abuse material, and collaborate with national law enforcement and national hotlines, as Marta previously mentioned, for example, free of charge hotlines. Third, companies also have an important role in developing safer and age-appropriate online environments. And this includes the development of age verification mechanisms, block allow lists, spend time controls, filtering, and opt-out options. It also entails communication or clear house rules and the setting of heightened default privacy settings, but also offering of reporting tools and processes and promotion of national support services for children. Fourth, companies can play a critical role in educating children, parents, and teachers about children's safety and responsible use of ICTs. And I think this is something that we have heard the different panelists have spoken to, and especially the chair of the CRC committee. And for example, companies can provide materials for use in schools and homes with children, parents, and teachers. And also ensure that they describe the content and, for example, parental controls in accessible language. But, I mean, there are much more examples in the guidelines. I can't go through them all here. And last but not least, companies can promote digital technology as a mode to further positive civic engagement. And this is the positive aspect of the ICTs and how they can use the ICTs. So this can include, for example, developing educational platforms, promoting digital literacy, capacity building in ICT skills, and supporting government priorities and civil society on ICT access, and also preventing overblocking of content. So these guidelines include sector-specific checklists that recommend actions for various industry, such as mobile operations, internet service providers, national and public broadcasters, content providers, online retailers and application developers, user-generated content, and hardware manufacturers. So at the end of the guidelines, there are specific checklists. And as we do not have time to review these sector-specific checklists today, I really invite you to visit the websites of ITU and also of UNICEF, where we have posted the guidelines. And I just want to also highlight that these guidelines are really living documents, and we will keep on updating them periodically based on new developments in this area, and also based on feedbacks from partners and based on feedbacks from implementation of the guidelines in the field. And we are currently rolling out the guidelines in some countries in Latin America right as we speak this week. They are using them in 2 workshops in Colombia and in Paraguay. And also we are rolling them out in the Pacific Islands. And when I say we, this is ITU and UNICEF and partners together. So for example, in Latin America, we partner with GSMA, and in the Pacific Islands, we are partnering with DigiCell on this. And we will also continue to roll out the guidelines in the coming year in other regions and countries. And I just want to conclude with 2 more remarks, that on the Child Online Protection Initiative website of ITU, we are also collecting case studies on policies, best practices, and other actions and processes that the broader ICT industry has implemented. And we invite you all to share any experience with us on this. And finally, I just want to conclude with noting, as Marta mentioned at the beginning, that our efforts to engage industry in child online protection must really be part of a broader strategy to address ICT-related violence, exploitation, and abuse against children. And in turn, this broader strategy needs to be part of an even wider national strategy to address violence, exploitation, and abuse of children in general through other modalities and in other settings. And lastly, I would like to take this opportunity to also announce that together with ITU, we are also right now working on developing a guide for governments on how they can develop a national strategy on child online protection and digital citizenship. And we hope that this resource, which really will complement the guidelines for industry on child online protection, that we will be able to share this relatively soon with you, and also get your feedback on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Clara. You were quick, to the point, and very comprehensive at the same time, and giving us a lot of expectation to be joining hands on these very important guidelines for governments and the other rollout initiatives that with ITU you are promoting. So thank you so much. I think I'm going to give the floor back to Adriana, but really to say thank you for all of you who are here representing agencies, and if we can, of course, there will be 1 or 2 minutes for a quick comment, if Adriana will allow. And to thank all my colleagues also who have been making us reach this stage where we are, the panelists, and one of the colleagues who was working with us in the study, Michael Miller, who happens to be here, that I'm also very happy to acknowledge. And so back to Adriana to now lead, I hope, a few moments for you too. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, all of you, for coming and for the presentations. I think they were very enlightening presentations. We are sorry that we didn't have much time to also hear questions from the public. I think we have a lot of important messages here, but I just want to highlight 3 things. One is that the universal free access. We should begin thinking more about that. Second thing that was said by the Young Network, we should use the ICTs to learn and not to hate. And then the third thing that I would like to highlight is the agenda for minimizing the risk should be driven by knowledge and not by fear. That is something very important. Then thank you very much, all of you, and a few comments from ITU. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry to barge in at the end, but I thought, for gender balance, maybe we should bring in a Y chromosome perspective here. It doesn't happen very often, I tell you, where you're the only Y chromosome on a panel. And the last time it did happen, I was in a, thank you very much, Claire, for doing such a great job of explaining what we're doing, working with UNICEF, and we're so pleased to do that. But the last time I had this opportunity, I was on a panel with UN Women. This made me think about violence, talking about violence against women, and I remember saying, violence against women will stop when men decide that it should stop. And listening to what we've heard today, I really think, the big elephant in the room is the same thing. I mean, violence against children online will stop when, frankly, men decide to stop this. So I think we need to engage more men in this fight. And I think we do need to work very closely with industry for all the reasons that have been spent. Government does have to take the lead. But I wanted to give you an idea of why I think it's important that women need to be more involved in this too. The digital divide is closing. It's good news. We do have basic mobile coverage for most of the world, although it's about 70% in the developing world. That's for mobile technology. For the internet, we're still a long ways away. Only about 1/3 of the world has access. So it's very important to get women online, especially because the nature of the divide has changed. There are 200 million fewer women who have access to the internet than men. If you do that, the numbers around that, as the World Bank did, we're looking at, if we could bring all those women online, it would add about $100 billion to the global GDP, not to mention all that common sense and, the other perspective that's missing now. So I hope we can engage industry and more women, but also more men in this. I was really, what you said, Veronica, about children online children now don't know the difference between online and offline. And for my generation, and for especially people like myself, and my wife's a computer scientist, I've worked in the industry. It's still scary that children can't separate the difference. But you know what? I think it's our best hope, because kids, as they mature, they will bring the sensibilities of, hopefully they're well raised, they will understand the sensibilities of the real world, and that should apply to the online world. Right now, for us, we're scared to talk about some of the issues of the online world, because even though they're exactly the same in the real world. And cybersecurity is a perfect example of that. We started the Child Online Protection Initiative because we couldn't get anyone to agree on issues around cybersecurity in many ways, and everybody does agree, this is literally a motherhood issue in many ways, and let's talk about children. Everybody wants to protect children, and children, especially this generation, will be our best hope for developing the strategies, the action, and ensuring that the rights and responsibilities in the real world are reflected in the virtual world. So thank you very much for having me part of this panel, and you know, please, let's get some more men involved, and but it's nice for change, anyway, to be.
Thank you very much for your comments. We are gonna finishing with the video click away, and from the part of Mission of Costa Rica, we would like to thank again to Marta and her office for all the work. Thank you.
Si en la escuela navegas, en la compu de alguien más, atención si te vas, no te olvides de cerrar, divertirse y tomar fotos con el celular. Antes de publicar, piensa en quiénes las verán. Todo a un clic. Pasar tiempo en internet puede ser algo genial, pero sin olvidar que hay un mundo que explorar. Hablar bien, hablar mal, opinar de los demás, ten en cuenta si después no te arrepentirás. Todo a un clic. Dar un like, seducir, mucha risa en el chat, no es lo mismo conocer una persona real. Regalar una flor o entregar